I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. Thanks for starting your day with us. We are going to begin this morning with the latest on the Jeffrey Epstein files. The bill that would force the Justice Department to release all of its unclassified records from its investigation into the late convicted sex offender is headed to the president's desk today, and he's promised to sign it.
The Senate has passed the bill.
That there is survivors of Epstein's abuse breaking out in cheers and tears last night when they heard the announcement at a candlelight vigil.
They were reacting to the Senate, which unanimously passed the Epstein Files Transparency Act. Hours earlier, it was approved by the House, with only one Republican voting no. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer celebrated the swift movement of the bill while putting pressure on the Trump administration to follow through and release all of the files. As for House Speaker Mike Johnson, well, he was frustrated because the bill passed in the Senate without any of the changes he was calling for.
Johnson should send the bill over now. Right now, there's no reason it can't be on the president's desk in an hour.
I'm deeply disappointed in this outcome. I was just told that Chuck Schumer rushed it to the floor and put it out there preemptively. It needed amendments. I just spoke to the president about that. We'll see what happens.
NBC News White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez is standing by with more on the next steps from the president. First, let's bring in NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Melanie Zanona for the latest from Congress. Mel, good morning. So walk us through how this is all expected to play out. Assuming the president does follow through with what he said he would do and sign the bill, what's next? What does this force the Justice Department to do, and how quickly?
Yeah, good morning, guys. So this bill does outline a timeline for the release of the Epstein files, and it's a relatively quick one. According to the bill text, the DOJ has 30 days to make publicly available in a searchable format, no less, all unclassified records, documents, and communications, as well as investigative materials in its possession related to Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. The resolution also does say that victim information can be redacted, as well as child sexual abuse material that can be withheld. And the resolution also says that documents may be withheld if it does jeopardize an ongoing investigation or case. And the reason why that is important is because Trump did just recently direct his Justice Department to open an investigation into prominent Democrats and other financial institutions, whether they had ties to Jeffrey Epstein. Now, the resolution does make clear that if there are withholding of documents, it has to be narrowly tailored or it has to be temporarily done. But we'll see how the Trump administration interprets that and whether it impacts the release of these files.
So, Mel, we know this bill had overwhelming support from both parties, especially after President Trump reversed his position just a couple days ago, giving his endorsement, even though prior to that he'd called this whole thing a hoax. But explain why a couple of Republicans, like Speaker Johnson, we played some sound from him, still have a problem with the way that it was fast-tracked through the Senate.
Yeah, Speaker Mike Johnson, to be clear, still voted for this resolution, despite his concerns that he's been talking about for the past few days. And primarily, he's talking about the concerns for victims and potentially having some of their identifiable information exposed, despite the fact that, as I mentioned, the bill does say that victim information should be redacted, as well as child sexual abuse material. That was another concern that Johnson mentioned. But the lone Republican in the House who voted against this bill was Clay Higgins. He's also from Louisiana, a Republican. And his concern was that innocent people would be erroneously implicated if their names are somehow included in the files. He even said on social media that if enacted in its current form, this type of broad reveal of criminal investigative files released to a rabid media will absolutely result in innocent people being hurt. So it's not just concerns about Jeffrey Epstein's victims, it's concerns about, in their view, making new victims. But despite all of that, this did overwhelmingly pass with Republican support. I think just a real sign of where the base is in the party right now, especially after Trump came out and sort of aligned himself with where Republicans already seem to be.
Mel, we've been talking about the fallout from some of these files with messages that were already released by lawmakers. There was also a Republican-led effort last night to censure a Democratic delegate over a text message conversation that happened between her and Epstein. It was back in 2019. Walk us through this. Why were Republicans pushing for this, and why did it fail?
So Plaskett has come under fire. This was some reporting from the Washington Post that really pieced together during a congressional hearing. It was with Michael Cohen in 2019. Plaskett was actually texting in real time with Jeffrey Epstein, according to these documents that were obtained recently from the Epstein estate. And essentially, he was sort of advising her on what questions to ask. So Republicans were pushing to censure her. That is a form of formal reprimand in the House. But ultimately, it did not pass because there were a handful of Republicans who either voted against it or voted present, most of them being on the House Ethics Committee. And their reasoning was that, yes, this doesn't look good, but we don't know enough information, and we can't just use these censure resolutions so haphazardly, and that we should conduct an investigation with the House Ethics Committee. That is what that panel is for. So we'll see if they actually take up that issue. For now, though, that censure resolution not going anywhere in the House, guys.
All right, Mel, thank you so much.
Let's now bring in NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez. Gabe, good morning. So no surprise that Congress overwhelmingly approved the bill to force the release of these files. Now it heads to the president's desk. As we've been discussing, we know he reversed course this past weekend. He encouraged this to be passed, encouraging Republicans. He promised to sign it. What happens now? When do we expect this to happen?
You know, Savannah, it is remarkable that you say it was no surprise that it was passed yesterday. Yes, that's true. It was expected to pass yesterday, but just a few days ago, you'll remember that it was really an uncertain question about whether this would get through Congress, perhaps the House, but the Senate was really up in the air. And now we're seeing that it was unanimous consent. Now, this morning, we're hearing from a senior White House official that the plan remains for the president to sign this bill as soon as it gets to his desk and he reviews it. Now, we don't have an exact timetable of when that might happen today, but yesterday the president was asked about Jeffrey Epstein again in the Oval Office. He lashed out against the reporter who asked the question, but let's listen to how he responded.
As far as the Epstein files is, I have nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. I threw him out of my club many years ago because I thought he was a sick pervert. And I guess I turned out to be right. But you know who does have? Bill Clinton, Larry Summers, who ran Harvard. All these guys were friends of his. You don't even talk about those people. You just keep going on the Epstein files.
And there you have a line of attack from the president, something we have been hearing from White House officials trying to draw more attention to Jeffrey Epstein's possible ties to high-profile Democrats, including former President Clinton. A spokesperson for Clinton says that he did nothing wrong in connection to Jeffrey Epstein. And Larry Summers, who you heard the president mention there, former Treasury Secretary, head official at Harvard, he has said he is deeply ashamed by his connection with Jeffrey Epstein, although he denies any criminal wrongdoing.
Gabe, let's talk about the president's agenda. We know back in March he called for the elimination of the Department of Education. The administration is now taking a major step toward that goal. So walk us through what they're doing to try and accelerate this plan to effectively shut down the department and what that means for education in this country.
Well, there are a lot of questions about what it means for education in this country, but significantly, the administration cannot just shut down a department without an act of Congress. However, what it is trying to do is essentially dismantle it piece by piece. In this case, announcing yesterday that it would shift several grant programs, very large grant programs, totaling billions of dollars, the largest of which would now be handled by the Labor Department. Now, this all comes as the president and his administration have said that they want to give more prominence to states when it comes to education and more authority for states to have. But critics say, including many teachers' unions, they say that this will negatively impact education across the country. But again, the largest change yesterday is that federal grant programs, including some federal funding for K through 12 schools, will now be handled by the Labor Department. Joan Savannah.
Gabe, one more thing we want to ask you about health care. Our viewers probably remember that was the big sticking point during the weeks-long government shutdown we just went through between Republicans and Democrats. Lawmakers don't look to be anywhere near a plan to extend the tax credits here. This is causing this sticker shock to people who get their insurance through Obamacare. Where does the fight stand now?
Well, certainly. Look, some Republicans are trying to extend these health care subsidies, a few of them, but only about 14 Republicans have signed on to this plan. But this is something that, people like Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene out of Georgia has had this escalating feud with President Trump over the expiring health care subsidies, worried that health care premiums will jump for tens of millions of Americans who depend on them. Right now, the administration is trying to make the case that money should be given directly to Americans through perhaps either flexible spending accounts. That's what some rank-and-file Republicans are looking at. But as of now, Joe and Savannah, there is no clear path forward for how these health care subsidies are extended and in what form.
All right, Gabe Gutierrez, thank you so much.
Another White House headline, President Trump gave a warm welcome to the Saudi Crown Prince at the White House. It was his first visit since the murder of Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi in 2018. During a lavish dinner last night at the White House to honor the Saudi Crown Prince, President Trump designated Saudi Arabia as a major non-NATO ally. Earlier in the day, the president seemed to defend the Crown Prince. That's despite a U.S. intelligence report which found the Crown Prince approved the operation to capture or kill Khashoggi. NBC News senior White House correspondent Garrett Hake has the latest.
President Trump rolling out the red carpet for Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, offering the kingdom's de facto ruler a lavish welcome, including an honor guard on horseback and a military flyover, including several F-35 jets, the same type of advanced fighters the president plans to sell to Saudi Arabia. President Trump touting Saudi Arabia's $600 billion of investments in the U.S.
What it really means for everybody that really counts is jobs, a lot of jobs.
Now saying the Saudi investment could rise to $1 trillion.
You're saying to me now that the $600 billion will be $1 trillion.
Definitely, because what we are signing, it will facilitate that.
I like that very much.
That friendly reception for the Crown Prince, a major reversal from the international ostracism he faced after the CIA concluded he ordered the murder of Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi in 2018. President Trump interrupting a question about the killing.
A lot of people didn't like that gentleman that you're talking about. Whether you like him or didn't like him, things happen, but he knew nothing about it, and we can leave it at that.
The Crown Prince, who has denied ordering the murder, responding.
We've improved our system to be sure that nothing happened like that, and it's painful and it's a huge mistake.
While President Trump was pressed about his family's business dealings in Saudi Arabia, including Trump-branded luxury properties.
I have nothing to do with the family business. I have left, and when I've devoted 100% of my energy. What my family does is fine. They do business all over. They've done very little with Saudi Arabia, actually.
The Crown Prince also suggesting he could join President Trump's signature Abraham Accords, normalizing relations with Israel, if there is a path to a Palestinian state.
I think you have a very good feeling toward the Abraham Accords.
Yes, definitely, Mr. President. We want peace for the Israelis. We want peace for the Palestinians.
That was Garrett Hake reporting. The Saudi Crown Prince was also pressed about the role of Saudi Arabia in the 9/11 terror attacks. He says he condemned the attacks, but the 9/11 Families Group says that any Saudi government official who conspired with the attackers should be brought to the U.S. to face justice.
Well, a panel of federal judges has barred Texas from using its redrawn congressional map, which Republicans enacted earlier this year in an effort to help President Trump maintain control of the House of Representatives. The court ordered Texas to use its previous map that was drawn in 2021 instead. Texas Governor Greg Abbott said the state would appeal directly to the Supreme Court. Now, the decision is a major blow for President Trump, who called on Texas Republicans over the summer to draw a new map that could result in the party gaining up to 5 seats. The ruling focuses on the arguments made in a letter from the Department of Justice. It urged the state to redraw maps and threatened legal action if they did not dismantle so-called coalition districts, which are majority non-white congressional districts made up of voters of different races and drawn in order to adhere to the Voting Rights Act. Well, the judge ruled that the Justice Department made a, quote, legally incorrect assertion that these districts were unconstitutional.
Federal investigators looking into the deadly Key Bridge collapse in Baltimore say a single loose wire was to blame and that the tragedy could have been prevented. The National Transportation Safety Board released its lengthy investigation yesterday. It comes more than a year after a massive cargo ship lost control and crashed into the bridge, causing it to collapse. 6 workers on that bridge were killed. NBC News national correspondent Aaron Gilchrist has more on the NTSB's report.
Federal investigators revealing a loose wire was the root cause of the deadly 2024 collision of this cargo ship into the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore.
Hold on traffic on the Key Bridge. There's a ship approaching. It just lost their steering.
That ship was the more than 900-foot Dolly, a cargo vessel from Singapore.
This tragedy should have never occurred. Lives should have never been lost. As with all accidents that we investigate, this was preventable.
The National Transportation Safety Board's investigation showing a single wire inside a breaker wasn't firmly in place, likely since the Dolly was constructed. When the wire slipped out, it knocked out power, including propulsion and steering. The ship's operator tells NBC News, in part, these matters will be reviewed in detail with our technical teams, the vessel owner, and counsel. The ship slammed into the bridge where 7 men were working. 6 of them died after falling into the river. Last summer, Tom spoke to Julio Cervantes Suarez, the sole survivor.
What was going through your head as you're falling into the water?
I thought we might never get out, he said. Cervantes Suarez and the families of the men who died have filed a civil suit against multiple parties.
It's been painful for the entire country to see this happen and no one held accountable. Hopefully, accountability is finalized today.
Now, the NTSB also revealed those workers on the bridge were never warned about the emergency on the water. If they had been at the same time as the police who blocked traffic, the men would have had nearly a minute and a half to try to get to safety. Back to you.
Thank you, Aaron.
Well, we have an update on a crime in Southern California that we've been following. According to a source with the Los Angeles Police Department, the singer David is now a suspect in the death of a teenage girl whose body was found in the trunk of his car 2 months ago. NBC News correspondent Camila Bernal has the story.
Singer David now a suspect in connection with the death of Celeste Rivas, according to a Los Angeles police source with direct knowledge of the investigation, telling NBC4 Los Angeles. The 15-year-old's decomposed remains were found in September inside a Tesla registered to him at a Los Angeles tow yard. But the girl was reported missing last year, according to authorities. Now, the LAPD source saying David has not been cooperative. Adding Rivas' death likely occurred in the spring and that the singer likely had help in dismembering and disposing of the body. Law enforcement sources have said the remains were not intact, and according to the medical examiner, it appeared the girl, who was described as having wavy black hair and weighing about 71 pounds, had been dead inside the Tesla for an extended period of time. The singer David, whose real name is David Anthony Burke, rose to fame on TikTok and was on tour when the body was found this summer. Now, David at the center of this gruesome and devastating investigation. And Rivas' remains were identified through forensics, but we still don't know the circumstances around how she went missing or how she died. Back to you.
Mila, thank you so much.
Let's get a check on your morning news now weather with pockets of rain in store for some parts of the country.
Angie Lastman's here with the latest for us. Hi, Angie. Good morning.
Hi, guys. Good morning. We'll start on the east where we've got some rain and some snow. First of it for some parts of this region here of the season. And you can see that it's a quick mover. We're going to see this on the way out here before the morning's over. But we do have some rain stretching from New York back to Philadelphia and down through Atlantic City. That system will be out of here, though, here as we get through the second half of our day. Meanwhile, out west, we've still got some rain falling across parts of the southwest, and that's where we're going to see kind of still remaining flood concerns across this region through the day today. We've got this additional rain that we're going to start to see shift into Southern California for tomorrow. It does become widespread, and of course, we know the risks that come with that. We've got the already saturated ground, and we've got the mudslide risk on those burn scar areas. Those are going to be the most vulnerable locations. And then even as we get into Friday, we're still seeing some of that rain centered across Southern California, but rotating into parts of Nevada and Arizona. We'll see even some thunderstorms possible with that. In addition to all of that, we've got a Pacific storm that's going to work farther to the east, and this brings concern for folks across the plains. We've got all of this tropical moisture being dragged in from the Gulf, and that's going to leave us with plenty of moisture to tap into across the plains, and of course this unsettled system working to the east. This means that we've got multiple rounds of this heavy rainfall that we're concerned about. So the flood risk, specifically tomorrow, is going to be highway and city street flooding that we're going to watch. You can see West Plains stretching all the way back to the border, Dallas, Waco, Little Rock included in that. We've got those rising water levels that we'll likely see on rivers and streams. So we are concerned for flooding, especially in the Texas Hill Country, where we could see upwards of 5, even close to 6 inches. Those will be isolated amounts, but still widespread heavy rain across this region through Friday. And then last but not least, we do still have those really warm temperatures. They've held steady. And again, we had plenty of records yesterday. We've got more likely today. You can see some of those places stretching across the southeast. Atlanta hit 78 degrees today, running 17 degrees above normal in Dallas this afternoon with a high of 83 degrees. We've got still 90s in southern Texas, low 80s across the Gulf Coast, and even as far north as Denver, 66 degrees in November. Not a typical temperature for this time of year. And we'll start to kind of moderate out in some of those areas farther to the west, but not so much for the southeast and even folks in the Midwest. 53 degrees in Chicago tomorrow, low 80s for Montgomery. We'll start to see things getting a little cooler by this weekend for the northern tier of that region, guys, but still 70s on tap for Atlanta and high 70s at that all the way into the weekend.
Right, if you're traveling this weekend for Thanksgiving, hopefully you're going south.
Pack your short sleeve.
Thanks,
Weird. Thank you.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.